Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Liv. I'm an independent author. This is not a writing related video. I know I was supposed to put one out today, but I have not really been in the headspace recently to film a writing related video because my book is very important to me. Okay, I put a lot of work into it over the amount of years I spent working on it. Like, I want the videos that I make about it to also be good, and I just haven't been in the right headspace to do that. I have had a lot on my mind in the past few weeks. That the main thing that's been on my mind is that recovery is very much not linear. And with a lot of my recovery journey taking place in April and May and getting like those like throwback posts or whatever, to like, oh, it's my 5 years clean today, it's my 6 years clean today, like the posts that I used to make in the more recent, like when it was still like a newer thing, and I'm 13 years clean now, 13 years in about a month. And just thinking about how I was very vocal about my recovery journey. And I was always very vocal about the fact that I did use self-harm as a teenager and have been in recovery for now 13 years. And I was very vocal about my recovery, but I was never really vocal about the fact that it's not linear. Like, I would make offhanded comments about like, oh yeah, and then when I was 17 I learned that recovery is not linear. But I never really like talked about it. I just kind of said like, you know, I'm so proud of myself for being clean for however many years, and you know, I'm not gonna go back, and just I wouldn't really get into the uglier parts of recovery. Lately I've been thinking that I do want to be more honest about the non-linearness of recovery, and just how, you know, even like, because just masking can be exhausting. Even sometimes reflecting back on those posts that I would make years ago, like 3 years clean, 5 years clean, like thinking about how I would only really talk about the positives. I wouldn't really get into like 2016, I was like, hey, 3 years, like I'm doing great. And you know, I was not exactly doing great. You know, 2016 was not a great year for me. I almost failed out of college. And you know, like I started having panic attacks again that I hadn't had in years that I can remember. You know, and I didn't really talk about that. I just said, hey, 3 years, like bought myself balloons to celebrate. And so lately I've been thinking maybe I should talk about the not so linear side of recovery. I am just going to be extremely careful to make sure that I am only sharing my experience and not dragging anyone else's business onto the internet, especially in a public way, because I am too old to the thing is, I teach high school. I'm not in high school. Okay. Like I don't need to go blasting other people's business all over the internet. Okay. if I'm going to put something on the internet, it's going to be about me. And so the main points I want to touch on are recovery not being linear, and then a big part of all of like the things that I'm going to get into is pattern recognition, which is one of my autism things. It might be like a trauma response, it might just be autism. I've been told it's an autism thing, so we're gonna go with that. But my pattern recognition, that can be so much of a blessing and also so much of a curse, because I can pick up new tasks quickly, I can fall into routines, I can also overthink about things that I do not need to be overthinking about because some ridiculous pattern recognition that's barely even related has come to the forefront of my mind. And I will get more into that. So, and it's like every time I think I know where to start this, there are like a million different places I could start this story. But much like my mental health, the story is not exactly going to be linear. So just bear with me. So where I'm going to start is, and you can still see it on my public Instagram, I made a post for Semicolon Day where and like I usually make a post for Semicolon Day every year. I have a semicolon tattoo, if you can see it. It's also in the Instagram post. As somebody who has been through a self-harm recovery journey, is still in the recovery part of that journey, I post about Semicolon Day pretty much every year, even if it's just a quick Instagram story. But this year I was feeling kind of brave and wanted to share something a little deeper and more personal. And so I went through an old document that was from like years and years and years ago. I turned my diary entries from when I was like 15, 16, 17 into poems to help myself work through that before I had a good therapist or I don't even think I had a therapist at all when I was doing that. So like before I was in therapy, I decided that was how I was going to process what had happened to me in my teenage years, was to just turn it into poems. And there were like three, so it was essentially, there were three people that I wrote the poems for. Basically turned the diary entries into like poems written in second person to different people. And there were three different people that I wrote to, and in some cases it did help. In some cases it reopened stuff before I was ready to have it reopened, because I was not seeing a therapist at the time. And so it was what it was. I don't really touch them. Like I don't revisit them that often unless I am like planning to bring up something in therapy and I want to just have those like raw emotions from when the things happened to bring up. Like to give an example, when I was 24, about to turn 25, it was coming up on the 10-year anniversary of the worst summer of my life, and the summer that I started self-harming, and a lot of it was coming to the forefront of my mind. So I revisited those poems and brought them up to my therapist, and my therapist worked through extensively all of that. Like I felt like it felt so clean and processed and just put out of my mind in a way that I hadn't realized. I hadn't realized how much it was still on my mind all those years later, until after like I spent a year processing it in therapy and just kind of like reflecting as an adult, being like, oh, like I see this differently. And that was something that was incredibly helpful for me. I did have a therapist as a teenager, and then years later, when I had access to my medical records and could see the notes that my therapist took in our sessions, and found out I was pretty much being gaslit for 4 years. So this was the first time that I had worked through that situation with a good therapist. And I tried to do the same thing when I was 28 and coming up on the 10-year anniversary of the canon event friendship breakup that altered the course of my entire life from that point. That was 2024. I was also not exactly going through another friendship breakup, but like was realizing that I had fallen out of contact with somebody who I was once close to, and it wasn't a messy thing. It wasn't anywhere near the scale of what I brought upon myself in 2014 with the original friendship breakup that like rearranged my brain chemistry forever. It was nothing like that, but like there were enough like small, teeny tiny parallels that like were making my pattern recognition kind of like sound off alarm bells. And I thought, well, it's coming up on the 10-year anniversary, so that's why this is obviously like more at the forefront of my mind. Let me read through those poems so that I can work through them in therapy in like 2 weeks when I have therapy next. And so I stayed up all night one night reading the entire set of poems that I wrote for that person. Realized after it was too late that that was not the move. And later that night was going to get drinks with my friends, which in that mental state was also not the move. And just, did not have the same effect as going through the 10-year anniversary of the other stuff. Like didn't really have the effect that I was hoping for. And I did get to work through it in therapy. It did not feel nearly as clean and processed while I was working through it in therapy as the other situation did. And then just, that was also like leading into summer 2024. That was just very bad timing on the part of my brain chemistry. And I don't even know why, because I was medicated. It wasn't like I was off my medication or anything. Like, I take antidepressants. I've taken antidepressants since 2021. I wasn't off of them when my mental health just like randomly dropped in the summer of 2024. But I, you know, worked through that in therapy, then went right into the 2024 election, which was not great for my mental health. And then working through my emotions surrounding that, and then going into my relationship at the beginning of 2025, and just the way that ended, while I was not medicated, because the long story as to why I wasn't medicated in the spring of 2025, but that was the last time that I ever let myself go unmedicated. Like, I was very adamant that was never going to happen again, because the first 2 weeks after my breakup, while I was waiting for the antidepressants to kick back in, I was like, just my friends who were with me during that time are never going to unsee the mental state that I was in during that time, and I will never forget that. Like, even after I got through those first 2 weeks and like thought, like after my meds kicked back in, thought I was back to normal, I didn't realize how still mentally gone I was for like months, until and it was kind of a joke saying you get over it on a random Tuesday. You really do get over it on a random Tuesday. Just around my birthday in January of this year, 2026, it was like something just snapped. It was like, oh, I'm 30 now, my brain is normal. And, or as normal as it's gonna be. But it was like, I just didn't realize how mentally not there I was for all those months, until everything just kind of clicked back into place. And I told my friends, like the best way to describe it is I told my friends, I'm like, basically had like a 6-month-long manic episode and didn't even realize it. They're like, we realized it, Liv. We could tell, we knew. And so, but then like during that, and this is gonna go back to pattern recognition, during that time where I was still just mentally not as present as I thought I was when I started getting a lot of pattern recognition at my job, where like a lot of things were starting to feel very similar to my first year of teaching, which is something that I have mostly trauma blocked out, but it was a bad time. And maybe one day I'll do a story time, but probably not. Essentially, I was feeling a lot of pattern recognition between the job that I had in November 2025, and the job that I had in 2021, 2022. And I didn't really like that pattern recognition, because that was a very, very terrible time in my life. And it was very scary that I was feeling pattern recognition for that. But I was working through it in therapy. And then especially after my brain just like clicked back to mostly normal, it was like all of a sudden it's like I had anxiety the whole time, but it was like now I could feel that I was having anxiety, because like it was like I couldn't feel really, I could barely feel anything for months, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, oh, that's anxiety. That's what anxiety feels like. I haven't felt that. But like I was having anxiety the whole time, but it was like all of a sudden I could feel it. And then I just like didn't know what to do about it. But I was working through it in therapy. I continued to work through it in therapy. I continued to talk to my friends about it. I even talked to like some higher up people at work who assured me, it's like, yes, this feels very similar, but it is not the same thing. We can promise you it is not the same thing. I just kind of cleared things up on that end, and was feeling better about it. And I kind of come up with a game plan. I was like, okay, the situation I'm in now at work is not ideal, but next year is going to be better. Here is my game plan, this, and this. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. And I was like, I just have to wait until next school year, and next school year is going to be better. And everything is going to put itself back into the correct places, and everything's gonna be fine. And I felt good about that. And so that was around like March, April, that I was just like, I feel really good about the place I'm in with work, the plans that I have, and all of that. And then spring break, I went to go see Boys Like Girls in Philadelphia with one of my friends. And it occurred to me like day of the concert that spring break, my first year of teaching, I went to that same venue to see Lorde with a different friend. And I was joking around with my friend. I was like, wow, like, you know, the fact that, you know, during my first year of teaching, I also went to a concert at this venue on spring break, and then immediately the week after spring break was when everything kind of, the dominoes started falling and everything was going wrong. You know, that's, my pattern recognition's really not gonna like that. And I meant it as a joke, but like, there's some things you don't speak them into existence, because you know that once you do, your brain's just gonna set itself on fire. You know, in retrospect, probably shouldn't have made that joke, because then I couldn't stop thinking about it. But I was like, you know what, like, I have had people tell me, like, I've had people higher up than me at work tell me that it is not, like, that I am not in the same situation that I was my first year of teaching, and that I do not need to freak out the way that I was. And even though this little teeny tiny thing is similar, it is a very stupid pattern to recognize, and it's gonna have nothing to do with my actual experience at work. Like, I was like logicking myself out of it, but I knew like I just needed that first week back from spring break to be normal before my brain would believe that the pattern recognition was stupid. So the week we got back from spring break was actually tech week for the school musical. Me and my two best friends are drama club advisors at our job. I don't really talk about that, but and I've like vaguely mentioned that I do an after school activity at my job, but I've never actually mentioned what it is, because I've been trying to be just very vague about my life at work. But it's the fact that it's theater is relevant to the story. And so I'm just gonna, you know, out and say it, that, you know, me and my friends are drama club advisors. It was tech week, which means I was at work for 13-hour days that whole week. And my sleep schedule was just not what it should have been. There were a couple days I fell asleep during rehearsal. Like, there were days that the kids told me they saw me fall asleep during rehearsal, and that was a little bit embarrassing. Then Wednesday, so Wednesday was the day before semicolon day, and I remember I was that was the day that I decided to go through my poems to put together that more personal post for semicolon day, just put it in my draft so I could post it on Thursday for semicolon day. And I didn't think twice about going into the poems, because I was like, I'm in such a good place mentally. Like, I'm in a really good place mentally right now, so it's not going to matter if I go through these. I'm in like pretty much the ideal mental state to go through these anyway. So I went and screenshotted the ones that I wanted to share, edited them together, saved the post in my draft so I could post it on Thursday. And then Thursday morning, I remember worried that it's not gonna be a good day, because like I knew like what was on the agenda for that day. It was basically a situation where it's like, this type of assignment, we can either have a really good day or a really bad day. And it actually ended up being a really good day. Like, I was surprised, and like I didn't even, like, once I got into the groove of the day, like I didn't even feel exhausted anymore. Like, I felt great, like I was having a great day, and just everything just felt very great. And then I got back from lunch, and I refreshed my email, and that's where this story takes a turn, because I have this joke that every time I say the word email, my therapist automatically makes $500. And if I say the words email and coworker in the same sentence, that's $1,000. So I have an email. It's addressed to me and my other two friends that are drama club advisors, and it's from another staff member about a situation that was brought to them by a student in drama club that, and I'm reading this email that's explaining like what the student said was happening, and like my jaw is just dropping the more I read, because it just keeps getting worse. And I'm just like, I'm not gonna go into detail about it, because like that's nowhere near my business to share. But I will say that it was reminding me a lot of a situation I had gone through when I was 15 at theater camp. And it wasn't like exactly the same situation by any means, but it was very, very, like, there were parallels and pattern recognition, and so I am just like horrified reading this email, and like like have my one hand on my phone ready, because like me and my friends have a group chat, my other friends that are advisors have a group chat, and I was like ready to like message them, be like, guys, what is happening? And then I get to the part of the email where it says like, and this was brought up to the advisors and they didn't do anything about it. And I have to like stop for a second, because I'm like, that was the first time that I had heard about this. So I was like, what do you mean it was brought up to the advisors and the advisors didn't do anything? And then I'm thinking like, did my friends know about this and not tell me? Like, like what, because there were days that I would leave rehearsal early to go to therapy, ironically. And we did reach, like when I was able to get a hold of my friends, like I had a planning period that period, and my other friends didn't. So we weren't really able to talk about it until like closer to the end of the day, when like, you know, winding down, and then one of my friends was able to hop on the chat. So we did figure out, like I was able to talk to my friends, and they did tell me like, okay, yes, this did happen. Like this was brought to us on a day where you had left early to go to therapy. We thought we had resolved it. So, and we forgot to tell you about it, which is our bad. We're sorry. But we didn't know it was still happening until we also got this email. And so like I, at first, like, and like, even if, so like, it's like, as I'm sitting there, like, and before I could talk to my friends, I'm sitting there thinking like, this kid has gone through a situation that I can relate to. And I, you know, think back to the Liv that wrote those poems, and, you know, the Liv that was going through those things, and how when I decided to become a teacher, I said, like, I thought back to that very situation and said, you know, when I become a teacher, if any of my students go through anything like what I went through, they will never have to feel the way that an adult, like they will never have to feel the way that the adults in my life made me feel. And that was like that was the foundation that I built my career off of, was being a safe adult, being somebody that could be trusted and who would help people and would help students who were going through things. And then just reading that this was brought up to the advisors who did nothing, I am shaking. I am literally like sitting on my floor counting like 5 things I can see, 3 things I can hear, and like waiting for my friends to get back to me in the chat and explain what's going on. And I'm just like, and so like once I kind of like calm myself down from that, talk to my friends, figure out what they know about the situation, my brain kicks back into gear, and I'm like, okay, well, whether or not this is the first time I'm hearing about it, doesn't matter. Our priority needs to be fixing it, because we can't just, like, obviously, like, something has to be done. Like, we, you know, we had rehearsal right after school, and I was like, we need to come up with a game plan, because like, as soon as we get there, we have to do something. And my friends agreed, and we were able to briefly, all 3 of us, get together and brainstorm our plan of action. But I was, and we did spend quite literally that entire rehearsal. I mean, it was tech week, so like there were like a million things going wrong at once, and the 3 of us were being pulled in different directions, but essentially we did spend that entire rehearsal working on that problem, and like talking to witnesses, talking to the students who were like the affected, getting their sides of the story, talking to parents, emailing administrators, like crafting the email to administrators, because like it got to a point where we're like, okay, like there's too many moving parts here, like it is out of the scope of what we can deal with. It needs to be escalated to the next step, and we need to involve administrators. And so I remember me and my friends spent like no less than 30 minutes, might have been closer to an hour, but no less than 30 minutes crafting that email. And we had to keep adding stuff to it and keep like pausing to talk to more witnesses, because we kept getting like more information as we were working on it. And then there was the fact that it was a long weekend, so we weren't going to have answers from admin about what they were going to do for at least 3 days. And I was very shaken, not only from just like the parallels to what had happened to me, feel like being told that a kid felt like I didn't take them seriously, which like looking like and like when I say that, it was basically, I know I wasn't involved in the original solving of the problem. That was like, because I wasn't there, but still just like just the thought that I had contributed to a kid feeling like they weren't taken seriously was a lot, and it did not feel good. And just not knowing what was going to be done to handle the situation, and knowing that I wouldn't have answers about that for 3 days. So I wanted to know that the kids were going to be okay. I wanted to know what was going to be done. And just, I was very shaken by all of it and did not sleep that night. And so we had the day off work. We were going to go in later for the show. We had the day off of work, or we were working from home or something like that. And I was working on some stuff for grad school, and I was emailing with my professor. I had to skip her class that week for Tech Week. And so I was emailing with her to like catch up. And it was during those conversations that all of a sudden, and it was talking with her that made me realize that the master plan that I had to just push through till next year will be better, that was kind of starting to unravel. And that was scary, because if that unraveled, there's a good chance I wasn't gonna have a job in the fall, because my contract was very dependent on this grad school program that I was in. And so, and I will get into all of that in another separate life update once I finalize some more details of all of that. But long story short, I was, feeling very in danger of, long story short, I was very shaken up about everything that was happening with the kids. And I was very shaken up about everything that was happening with possibly possibly not being able to finish the grad school program that my contract was dependent on. And so I just, there were so many danger signals going off in my head at the same time. And I knew like I was not going to be able to get answers about the kids until Monday, and it was Friday. And so I was gonna have to make peace with that and just deal with them the best that I could, with the other advisors, just deal with that situation as it, like, just deal with everything as best we could until we got answers. And I remember talking to my friends, and one of them brought up that she was also kind of feeling like some kind of way about being told the advisors didn't handle it. And like, as vague as I can be about this without getting into the kids' business, basically what the other advisors did to handle the situation while I was not there, they contacted parents. There were threats of removing people from the club, and the student who had gone to the other staff member about it was not aware of those steps being taken, because I guess there's like some kind of protocol, like we're not supposed to share. I don't know. I like everything, those conversations that we had about that situation are fuzzy now. But it was something to do with protocol. So it's like the kid wasn't invalid to feel that it wasn't addressed, because the kid had no idea that it, like, how deeply it was addressed. So there was that side of it too. But then because we were just talking about how, like, wouldn't this other staff member know enough about us to know we would not intentionally brush off a kid coming to us about something like that? Like, we would not play about that. And and it very quickly clicked for me, because I was like, well, I don't know, guys, because I know you a lot better than this other staff member knows any of us. And as soon as I read the advisors didn't handle it, my first instinct was, what the hell did y'all do or not do? And it took me a second to realize, it did take me a second to be like, okay, like, let me hear out what happened. Like, let me hear the other advisor's side of what happened before I like freak out about this. Like before I freak out at them for not doing anything. And so I'm like, when a kid comes to you about something like this, your first instinct should be to wholeheartedly believe the kid. Just put completely out of your mind what you know to be true or believe to be true about the people that they are saying failed them or hurt them or something like that. Because when I was 15, if the adults that I had gone to about what was happening to me had taken me seriously, believed me without kind of throwing in, well, so-and-so wouldn't do that, you must be mistaken, like you must have understood this wrong, like if instead of doing that, if they had just wholeheartedly believed me and just handled the problem based on the information that I gave them, not what they believed to be true based on their opinions of people, then I would have had a very different experience. And I actually really admired that the other staff member handled it that way. And it was just so, I just thought it was so important. And, you know, did I love being told that we intentionally didn't take a kid seriously about a situation that was very close to home for me? No, didn't love that, but I understood how important it was that that's how it happened. And we were actually able to clear things up with the student and like explain get the student's side of like, oh, like the student didn't realize how much this situation had been handled. And I had even spoken to the student, just been like, it was never my intention to make you feel like you weren't being taken seriously. And the student had told me like, oh no, like you are fine. Like, cause even though I wasn't there when the situation was originally handled, I wanted to do everything I could to make it right once I became aware of it. And so just like having kind of that confirmation from the student that like, I didn't fail them the way that the adults in my life had failed me. Having them confirm that to me in a way, it did lift a lot off of me, but I still wasn't gonna be like, I wasn't gonna relax until I knew the situation had been handled, and that was still at least 3 days away, at like bare minimum 3 days away. But in the meantime, there was the matter of communicating with the other staff member, kind of clearing things up, letting them know like, hey, these are the steps we took, because we were all in agreement, like if a student came to us, we would want to know what the next steps that were taken were. We would want to be updated. We would want to be in the loop, and we also just wanted to basically just clear everything up as best we could before we until we were able to find out what the steps admin was taking next were. So we decided that when we saw that staff member that night, we were going to pull them aside and update them about it. And then so I was tasked with doing that because basically the three of us were split up doing different jobs. And so when I approached them and was like, hey, we just want to give you an update about yesterday. And basically we were told, yeah, no, we're not going to talk about that. And so I am like panicking a little bit because I will elaborate on this in a little bit when I get to like the next part of everything. But a big major trigger for me is when I'm not able to communicate with people. And so that, like, on top of like everything else that my brain was setting itself on fire about, that interaction, like, you know, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, what are 3 things I can see? What are 3 things I can hear? And my friends like noticed that I was starting to panic, and one of them just took me aside and was talking to me, and you know, and was like basically working through it with me. And then my other friend said like after she saw that, and that was like not even a full-scale panic attack, that was just like compared to what happened later, that was like Weenie Hut Jr. of live panic attacks. And I was like trying to logic myself back to reality. I'm like, obviously not the time and place to talk about this. We are going to clear things up. Everything is going to be fine. We are going to hear back from admin. Everything is going to work out. And then one of my friends, after seeing me in that state, and then, yeah, no, we need to talk about this tonight. Like we can't wait on this. We need to clear this up now because you are a mess. And I told her like, well, and basically she was just like, she said she was going to take charge of it because I'm the kind of person that like, if I tell someone we need to talk and they say, no, thank you, I'll just say, okay. And I will walk away. And if whatever emotions I have about that, I will deal with away from them. And so she's like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go up to them and be like, we need to talk because I'm not gonna take no for an answer. Like, this is important. We need to clear this up because it just, we have to. And so we tried again and we're still told we're not gonna talk about it. And then my friend said something very rude that you don't want to say to somebody that you work with, and especially you don't want to say to somebody you work with while you're at work. And like well, I say we because I lumped myself in as a bystander because I was standing very close to her when she said it. But so we are very, very lucky that it did not escalate. Just genuinely so lucky that did not escalate because I've had to like meet with admin over less than that. But when she said that was when like the switch really flipped for me. That was like, oh no, like everything that I'm feeling, I'm going to feel right here, right now. Because I'm like, my friend has just said something very rude that was not warranted, is going to not only burn a bridge with this person I don't want to burn a bridge with, but also I'm watching both of our careers flash before our eyes because I was standing very close to her when she said it. And just everything is just all at once just coming to the forefront. And I am like, I need to get away from the kids because I am going to like 90% of me is disassociating. The 10% of me that's not disassociating is having a panic attack, and I do not want to traumatize the children. So I need to get to a hallway where there's no kids. And I took my friend with me and I like begged her to apologize. And again, I was 90% disassociated and 10% having a panic attack. So I don't remember a lot about what happened in the hallway. My friend told me that she did apologize. I believe her. I wasn't there. I was not mentally in that room. So I don't have a lot of memories. What I do remember is that no less than 3 other coworkers saw me having a panic attack. And I've mentioned in one of my other autism chat videos that I made, like people like me having a meltdown or a panic attack or both, just really not something I like other people to see. It is very scary, ugly, embarrassing, vulnerable. It is not a state I like to be seen in by anyone, even my close friends or family. And just the knowledge that at least 3 people I work with saw that was a lot. So that was just added on top of just everything else that was just setting my brain on fire. And so that side of things was still not going to be resolved on that end, and we were still going to have to wait until Monday to know what the next steps the admin that we contacted were taking were going to be. And so I was just very triggered by a lot of different things. There were a lot of different moving parts, and it was the most triggered I had ever felt in a long time. And I remember talking to my therapist, because I had therapy that next week, and being like, you know, like the big 3 adverse events from my teenage years that, and really the big one, because the other two stem from that, that every other like major traumatic thing that I have gone through has, like every other major like trigger that I have stems from one of those three things. It really, again, stems from just the one, because the other two big things stem from that one. If that makes any sense. I'm like, it's quite literally everything at once is like every danger signal my brain possibly has is going off at once. And so that was not a good time. And just to say the least, that was not a good time. The priority was still dealing with the situation with the kids, which we did get dealt with. I'm not gonna share details about that because not my place, but it was handled to our knowledge. I was not in a good place mentally with all of that, and I was just feeling very, so during that week was when my 13 years clean came up, April 23rd. And I remember I had therapy the day before that, and I was telling my therapist, I'm like, in this entire 13 years, I have never been more tempted to relapse than I am right now. And I didn't relapse. I'm still clean, 13 years and about a month now. But I do want to kind of go into just a little bit of the backstory. I'm not gonna share my whole journey, but just talk about why I was feeling so particularly just in that space. So to back up to summer 2011, I'm 15 years old, and I just every day of my life feel like I am screaming for help and nobody can hear me. It got to a point where I realized there was something I could do, where while I was doing that thing, I did not have to think about any of my other problems. And years later, like by years later, I mean literally this past month, I explained it to my therapist as like I threw a Molotov cocktail at my problem so that I would have a different problem. And that was essentially why I started self-harming. Was one, I wanted a different problem, and two, I thought nobody can hear me screaming for help, maybe they'll hear this. Didn't really work out that way. It was really just, you know, now not only did I have all the problems that I already had, but now I also had this Molotov cocktail problem. But it was my escape, for lack of a better way of saying it. Like when I was doing it, I didn't have to think about anything else. Then, you know, that went on for not quite a year. When I was 16, I stopped, and I had it in my head that my recovery was going to be very linear. You know, it obviously wasn't. Then when I was 17, I found myself back in a situation where like I was screaming for help, but instead of nobody hearing me, it was like the people that did hear me either completely misinterpreted what I was saying, or just brushed me off because I was just a stupid kid, an autistic kid at that. I was only 17. I didn't know what my feelings really were. Nothing that I was experiencing was real. None of my problems were real. None of it was gonna matter. So it was just stupid teenage stuff. And, you know, a lot of the adults that I talked to during that time, like, only knew the surface level of everything, because, and some of them, and with some of them it was because they didn't care to get past that surface level. And there were layers to it that years later I realized, like when I was 17, there were layers to it that I didn't know were there until years later as an adult in therapy. I unpacked that and was like, oh shoot, that was never about this. It was always like, it was so much deeper than that, and I didn't even realize it. And so, but in that moment, just being brushed off as just a stupid kid who didn't know what I was feeling, I hit a breaking point and I relapsed, and it was only for 2 days, but you know, it was still a relapse. And so I went a year, a month, and 5 days between quitting and relapsing. And I remember in summer 2014 was when I hit 1 year, 1 month, and 6 days. And I remember thinking like, well, I remember like I made a post on my Tumblr at the time to just be like, hey, I beat my record for how long I've stayed clean officially. Well, unless you count the first 15 and a half years of my life. And then I made it kind of a goal at that point. I'm going to make it to 16 years because I started cutting when I was 15. So I'm going to make it to 16 years. And then, and with the amount of things that I went through in the summer of 2014, and the fact that I didn't even consider for a second, even like relapsing was never even an option. Like it was never something I wanted to do. It was never something I thought about doing that whole summer. And I got to a point where I was like, you know what? If I survived all of this and didn't even think about relapsing, there's no way I'm not making it to 16 years. Like I am never gonna cut again. Like it's just never going to be an issue again. If I made it through all of this without even being tempted to relapse, there is no way anything is ever going to get to me like that ever again. And for a long time, that was true. Like no matter what mental health crisis I was going through in my non-linear healing journey, relapsing was just never something that I thought about until the first time that it really felt like something I might do again someday was last spring, the first 2 weeks after my breakup, the first 2 weeks after getting broken up with, when I was not medicated. And I attributed it to not being medicated. But as I said, I have been taking my medication consistently from that point because I am not doing that again. And so when all of a sudden those feelings were coming back this past month, I didn't understand why. And like, I fortunately had a psychiatrist appointment also that same week. And so I asked her, I'm like, hey, what's happening? Because like I know logically it would just be throwing a Molotov cocktail at my problem so that I have a different problem, but damn, I want a different problem. And I was still able to logic myself out of it. Like I am still able to logic myself out of it and be like, it would not be a different problem. It would be another problem. I'm also 13 years clean, which means I am 3 years away from 16 years. I am not throwing everything away that I've worked 13 years for. I'm just simply not going to let that happen. And I know it's not as simple as that because yes, I am able to logic myself out of it now, but I don't know if I always will be able to logic myself out of it. And I do have amazing supports. I have my psychiatrist, I have my antidepressants, I have my therapist. I increased my therapy sessions. I was going every 6 weeks, now I go every 2 weeks, and it's all covered by insurance. And I have multiple amazing friends who are dedicated to keeping me safe, and have let me know who have shown me that they are very dedicated to keeping me safe. And I know not everybody has those supports, and everybody has insurance that will cover all the like therapy and medication and stuff like that. Not everybody has great friends like I do, and so I know I am very, very fortunate to have all of that, because just I don't know where I would be without all of those supports right now. But my psychiatrist, I don't remember exactly how she explained it, but she did assure me like it's not that the meds aren't working, it's just that sometimes you still are going to have those feelings. And I don't want to try to quote her because like most of the conversations I've had with anybody in the past month are kind of fuzzy, so I don't remember exactly what she said, but she did assure me like it wasn't that the meds weren't working. And I do know, like I said, it was the most triggered I had felt. Like there were so many different triggers all going off at once. And the other thing is the body remembers trauma, and the amount of things that I have gone through in April or May, across the last like 12 years of my life, the amount of things that have happened during the months of April and May, I'm like, my body has enough to remember during those months, which is why I've just which is why my friends were like, why the hell did you let yourself be unmedicated during April of all months in 2025 last year? And so, it's, I'm not going to talk about that, because that was just me being stupid, and thinking that I would be fine without them, and I wasn't. But you know, and then I even had like the week following that, all of that, like the week following everything that happened with Drama Club, I got a cold, and it was the same cold that I had around, and it was obviously not the same cold, but it felt very much like the cold I had back last year around the time I got broken up with, which was the same cold, and I also had a cold the weekend of the 10-year anniversary of my Canon Event friendship breakup, and which I also had a cold during. And so me having a cold, it was like, oh good, another pattern. And just like my body already remembering just so much with it being like that time of year, that like whenever something's gonna happen to me, it's pretty much gonna happen in that time of year. But also like I think I started getting into this, but I didn't really elaborate. The biggest trigger that I have is not being able to communicate. Like nothing, like the most guaranteed way to hurt me is to not communicate with me. And I'm not saying that everybody who has chosen not to communicate with me has done it with the intention of hurting me. I'm just saying that that is my biggest trigger. And you know, a lot of people who have hurt me in that way have had no way of knowing that. However, I do think that when you're pushing 30, you should know better than to break up with somebody in a text message. But that's just me. But just from all the times that I have been gaslit over the years, lied to, ignored, ghosted, or times that people have just chosen to not communicate with me or refuse to communicate with me, all of that has built up over the years to turn into just my biggest trigger. And add into it like the fact that with my autism, like one of my coping mechanisms is to over-explain myself and give people context, because I'm more palatable with context. And if I can't give people context for why I am the way that I am, then what are they going to think of me? And it's just, it's a coping mechanism. And it's like when I'm not able to cope with my anxiety by giving people context about why that will send off danger signals in my brain. And so and it's just, like I said, a lot of moving parts going into that being my biggest triggers of just not being able to communicate. And so just like I said, pretty much every danger signal I had was going off at that point. And it was the first time, because I mean, like I said, I did kind of feel tempted, like I did kind of feel like relapse was a possibility last year, but I was not medicated during that time, so I just kind of brushed it off when I stopped feeling that way. But this year was the first time in my entire non-linear mental health journey that I have had to confront the possibility that one day I might relapse. It's not gonna be, like, it's not as easy as I thought it was gonna be. It's not gonna be as easy as it seemed like it was gonna be when I first, you know, beat my record for how long I stayed clean and thought, you know, if I got through this without wanting to relapse, I can get through anything. And just, I was so young when I was so young back then, and just there's so much that had not yet happened to me. And, I've known for the last 13 years, like my recovery, my mental health journey, my struggles with depression, my recovery from things that have happened to me over the years, none of that is going to be linear. And I have very much come to terms with that. But this was the first time I had to confront that, oh, I might relapse someday. Because like I said, right now, I can logic myself out of it. Right now, I have access to therapy, my psychiatrist and antidepressants. I have incredible friends who are dedicated to making sure that I feel safe. And, you know, I have all of that right now. There might come a day where I don't have insurance for whatever reason. There might come a day where I don't have money to afford therapy and antidepressants without insurance. There might come a day where I don't have access to, there might be a day where, you know, my friends are busy and can't answer the phone, and because, you know, we're all adults, we all have lives. You know, there might come a day where I have to be alone with my thoughts because there's like, everybody's busy and that's not their fault. And, you know, their world doesn't revolve around me. It's very, like they are very dedicated to making sure I know that I can talk to them, but, you know, like, stuff happens, stuff comes up, like, it's not their fault if I happen to be having a mental breakdown at the time that something is happening in their lives, you know? You know, I don't know where I'm going with all that, but it's just, you know, so right now, and it's like, I've been very self-aware about the state of my mental health and how it is basically spin cycling, and how, like, I have been in the past month kind of slipping back into that place I was in before my birthday, you know, like the random Tuesday where my brain just like realigned itself. Like, I am slipping back into a place where I am very disassociated, and just not feeling, you know, just like, I don't know how else to explain it. Like, just that place that I was in for all those months. And, you know, it can vary from day to day. It can even vary from hour to hour. Like, am I sad? Am I angry? Am I fine? Do I feel anything at all? Like, the answer depends on, like the answer varies. Like, the answer varies depending on when you ask me. And, like, right now I'm fine. Like, I've been fine all day today, pretty much. But then, like, I'll have days at a time where I feel fine, and then out of nowhere, it'll be like, oh, I'm not fine right now. And I have to work through that and use my resources because I have to take care of myself. That's just something I have to do. And in being very self-aware of the mental state that I'm in, I'm also very self-aware that I do take it out on people who have nothing to do with it, or barely anything to do with it. And I don't like that I'm doing that. But it's like, I don't know how to stop myself from doing it. Well, and like, when it's my close friends and family, like, they know my brain is just on fire. But when it happens with people that I'm not as close to, you know, it's not quite the same situation. And, you know, the world doesn't cater to, like, and like, the world doesn't revolve around me. I can't expect everybody to just get it and know that it's not personal. And I have to deal with the consequences of when I can't stop myself from taking out those emotions on other people. Like, when all those danger signals are going off in my brain from all the pattern recognition and everything else, and just the body remembering and all those things, it doesn't matter how self-aware I am, it's like, I'm going to slip in front of somebody. Like, I can't mask all the time. And and more recently, I found myself kind of in a situation where, like, my brain was just so on fire from pattern recognition and all those things. And I had a moment where I was just kind of I was like vividly remembering a time during my first year of teaching when I was going through a friendship breakup with someone, and we were like in the middle of the argument that was the end of everything. And I remember thinking, like, you know what, I'm done with her. I'm going to go block her on social media because this is ridiculous. And when I got there, she had already blocked me. And just like the amount of times that something, and it's just like the fact that, you know, I had a window to leave before I got left, because I had picked up on the fact that I was about to get left and I just missed my window to do it. And that stuck with me. And, you know, it resurfaces occasionally, not often, but occasionally it will resurface. And I am somebody who has spent the better part of my life professionally making an ass of myself, begging people to stay in my life who very clearly want nothing to do with me. And so I've never really been one to leave before I get left. I will drag it out to the bitter end and just make a complete idiot of myself in the process. And I got to a point recently with someone where I kind of, between all the pattern recognition, was kind of feeling like I have a window, I'm going to get left, and I have a window to leave first, and I need to take it. And it was a very impulsive decision. It was a very impulsive decision. It was in a moment of panic, and it's not the kind of decision I would have made if I was in a good place mentally. Because once I did it, like once I couldn't go back. And I was talking to my therapist about it, and I was just kind of like, it's very possible that I overreacted and that I wasn't going to get left, and that I didn't need to do any of, and that I didn't need to take this window. So it's very possible that I overreacted. Like, it's very possible that this was all for, it's very possible that I just threw a different type of Molotov cocktail at all my problems. But what's done is done. Like, I couldn't undo what I had done. And, you know, maybe I was right. Maybe I was reading everything right, and I was gonna get left, and it is good that I did things the way that I did. I don't know. It doesn't feel much better than getting left, I will say. I was talking to my friends, and I was like, you know, this is the first time I've actually managed to leave before I got left. It does not feel any better than just getting left. It really doesn't. So, you know, lesson learned. Maybe wasn't the situation I needed to learn this. Like, maybe there would have been a better situation to learn this lesson with. But what's done is done, and, you know, I have to deal with the wreckage that I've created. If you take anything from this video, it's the fact that mental health is not linear, and right now, things really suck for me. Like, right now, where I'm at, things really suck. But they're not gonna suck forever, because mental health is not linear. So, you know, I have to deal with the wreckage that I created and taking out my nonlinear mental health on other people, and I have to continue to take care of myself and continue to mask when I need to mask, and I just need to push myself through this sucky period of life until things stop sucking again, because, you know, it's not linear. So because if no matter how much things do suck, I do know that because my journey is not linear, it's not gonna suck forever. And so I just need to push through until it stops sucking. And, you know, recovery is not always happy, smiling pictures holding balloons, or drawing semicolons on my arm, or getting semicolons tattooed on my arm, or reflecting on my past and how much I've grown. And it's not always like that. Sometimes it's this. And so if it's this for you, you're not alone, but it's not gonna suck forever. I am repeating myself, which means it's probably time for me to wrap up this video. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.